Hello, everybody. May I start with a show of hands, please? Who was here in this hall for the discussion we've just had on waste? Wow, okay. Hooray, welcome back. So that was the majority, I think. And as you'll know, and those few who were not here will not know, we had quite a big discussion about really the topic of this panel as well, in a way, about the whole food system. We even had Angus Deaton say that actually food waste wasn't really a problem, which he phrased in a fascinating way. So I wish we could have those panelists on this panel as well, and we could just carry on with that, sort of merge the discussion, but we can't. So instead, we have this panel on what does it take to build a sustainable food system, featuring Peter Tyedmers and Muhammad Yunus, who you met this morning, and also a new participant, Anne-Marie Hermansson, who's a professor at Chalmers University of Technology. So Anne-Marie, welcome. I wanted to start with you, since we haven't heard your voice yet, and ask you how you view this question of building sustainable food systems from your perspective as a scientist who focuses on food production, from raw materials to table.
Thank you. Well, I was very interested in your speak this morning, and you said that the industry should not be profit-making, but problem-solving. Right. And I think that is really the challenge we have in front of us. One thing that has not been so much addressed today is use of water, for example. The industry is using huge amounts of water, and I think in the future the industry has to find new ways to produce food without using so much water. That is one thing. And you also need to use less energy. So there are a lot of challenges in front of us when it comes to solving problems for the production line.
Would you put one problem above all others?
I think in the long perspective, I think water is the biggest problem.
Okay.
But in the near future, I also think that when we're producing new varieties, maybe new proteins, new varieties of seeds and so on, we also have to make them into food. So really, you can say that cooking is an art. It means that you don't really understand what you're doing. But in the industry, you really have to produce a product in the end. So you have to have an understanding how you're going to use new raw materials to produce foods. I think that is a challenge too.
Harold Schmitz, in the discussion we've just had, highlighted the complexity of food as a chemical prospect, the complexity of the science of food. Is that something you agree with?
I mean, if you can compare to if you would like to put together a car, I think to put together a lasagna industrially is very complex as well.
Yes.
So I think the complexity is enormous.
Yeah. And do you think you have sufficient talent in the sciences to understand it?
No, I think we have a lack of talent for the knowledge for the moment. I think there is a big need for new science and new engineer to challenge to really take the challenges in front of us into account. I mean, in the 90s, there was a technology pool. We invented freezing, microwave treatment. We did a lot of Swedish industries, at least, are built of technology. Now, the industry have bought market shares, and they have not developed so much in technology. So I think the technology requires more trained people.
And let me just follow up on one other thing he said. He highlighted the need for more talented people to move into the sector. He said that once upon a time they had lots of talented people, but now it's proving more difficult. Is that true?
Yes, I think that is a big requirement because the talent goes where the challenges are, and so I think that is the reason.
It's a nice way of phrasing it. The talent goes where the challenges are, not the talent goes where the money is.
I would like to think so.
What do you think? Do you think that's true?
No, I think money is still very attractive, pushing people in the direction they want, and also in the framework that we have. That plays a big role because people still not oriented to the other aspect of human being. And in the existing framework, misinterprets human being. That's many of the problems start from that. Assume that a human being is selfish, motive-driven. And that's too narrow an interpretation of a human being. To me, human being is a much broader being, which includes many other aspects. Selfishness, yes, it is part of human being, but selfless is also a very important part of human being. That part is not done when we're designing businesses and things like that, because it's told that there is a self-interest which drives economy. And misses out the whole idea that I can be driven by other motives also. People say making money is the happiness. That's why you chase that. And nobody is going to do something else. This is the incentive in the world. I said, I agree, it is an incentive in the world, but not the incentive. There are other incentives. To me, I say making money is a happiness. I agree. Making money is happiness. Making other people happy is a super happiness. Why don't you follow that? So that part is missing completely.
Thank you. Peter, you want to come in?
I wanted to come back to the question I think you posed about what are the greatest challenges associated with food provisioning. And absolutely, I think water supply or water-related impacts. We just have to think about the Baltic. I mean, as Swedes, you live with the collective challenge of Northern Europe, and that long agricultural history, plus human habitation, has massively transformed that receiving basin. But not all parts of the world, I know those are highly regionally specific phenomena, whether it's a supply limitation or a receiving environment limitation. So absolutely, in some areas, it's maybe the most acute issue. I live in Nova Scotia. We have fairly small landmass on the North Atlantic. Runoff from our agriculture goes into a much more deeper part of the North Atlantic than the Baltic. So that receiving environment issue may not be there, and we have a tremendous amount of water, probably similar to what Sweden experiences. So I think in our context, water may not be the biggest issue. If we step back and think about global scale issues, and I'm reminded of Johan Rockström's great paper that he led looking at sustainable boundaries. I think reactive nitrogen is so massively under-addressed. It is one of those phenomena that even now, our livestock sector by itself, right now, is exceeding their limit for annual reactive nitrogen entering the biosphere on an annual basis. Just that one sector. So as we project into the future, it's going to get worse. So even climate change absolutely is a big deal, but reactive nitrogen is such a strangely and broadly overlooked phenomena.
Why is it overlooked?
In part, it may not have, it hasn't received the political profile. There is no IPCC equivalent. And in part, maybe that's because it doesn't seem to present the imminent threat to massive population displacement and disruption of humans. But people with a lot more experience around reactive nitrogen politics and science might have a better answer than maybe somebody here.
Maybe indeed. But I mean, getting to the topic of the panel, which we absolutely are on, of what it takes to build a sustainable food system, presumably the first thing it takes is people to understand what that would require and what matters. And if things like
water reactive nitrogen
are being overlooked, then we are a long way from understanding how to make things sustainable. So how do you change people's understanding of the factors that are involved?
Well, where I wanted to go is, I think you said a moment, we're a long way from understanding the problem. I think we understand the problem quite well.
Right.
I think we have a good sense of the relative, these phenomena, maybe not all the phenomena that we'll eventually come to appreciate, but in these phenomena, we have a sense of how many food systems, whether from production, processing, or related, or waste related, how they contribute to either climate change, how they contribute to eutrophying emissions. And we even have a strong sense, I think, of where in the food systems the biggest drivers are. And so we had another session earlier on meat. Meat is an important discussion to have, and we've touched on it a lot. We can identify. We know where the challenges broadly are. We've talked, I think a lot of people in this room, because you're already engaged, you probably already have a strong sense of ways to address it. But we have a lack of, I think, broader societal willingness to engage.
Well, I mean, that's really what I'm getting at. How do you increase the knowledge? How do you increase the engagement? How do you increase the interest?
Yes, I think it has to be on a governmental level to some extent. We have to have some incentives to change, really, and it's just not something you can do by yourself. So we have to have this incentive, and I think the most important thing really is to produce more nutritious food. And I was very interested in your example this morning with Danone and the yogurt. And then I have a question here, because one thing is the commodity prices worldwide.
Yeah.
If you haven't control of the commodity prices, you may run into very big problems.
Sure.
Do you have some thoughts about that?
Well, just to cover some of the points just raised about problems generated by the businesses and how science and others can help overcome those problems. The greed-based system will see this as a collateral damage. This is so important that we have to move on. We cannot take care of everything. So the waste will come, damages will happen to the climate, and all this is because we are so concerned about reaching the goal that our motive provides it. So that's where we have to see other aspects, other players. The social business, as I was explaining, that people who want to become selfless-driven businesses come into the picture. So the Danone thing was a selflessness-driven. So there is a problem, malnutrition, where nobody else is paying attention. It's a charity-based, international donors help you do something. This is not sustainable. You cannot change the life of people on charities and so on. It has to be involved inside the system itself. So I said, maybe we should create a business to solve that problem in the initial way. That's where the Danone came, focused on malnutrition, and came up with lots of ideas how to make it possible, make it very cheap, make it attractive to the children so that they can eat it, they will not throw it away. And the company did that and made that yogurt possible. And of course, we have gone through the roller coaster ride of the commodity price. Milk prices shot up suddenly. So the price level that we wanted to keep for the poor people, we cannot keep it anymore because the milk prices, this is 2008, when all the prices were going out at the time. So that's where we hit the problem. Then again, it's a creative thing that social business brings in. You have to fight the problem so that you can solve it. So we are thinking about, okay, does it have to be all milk-based? Can we mix milk and cereal? Still have the same thing, same nutrition and same the micronutrients involved, and so taste as delicious. So we combined it, reduced the price of the milk price, so the milk cost is going down. So now we have several alternatives. We have yogurt drink. You see, still we have the same micronutrients, but still make it. So continuous process is, we are overcoming the problems created by that bigger world. That bigger world probably would not have created all this problem if that bigger world is also driven by some social business. See, possible? Is the beginning. So we do that in the yogurt and the thing, and also we take the waste. We have been discussing waste. We created a joint venture with McCain to take the potato case, because 26% of the potato grown in France is thrown away because the shape of the potato is not appropriate for French fry. It's not appropriate for chips. So the companies don't buy and the farmers can't sell, so they throw it away. So we came up with this business idea, collect all those throwaway 26% of the production and take the unemployed young people from France, create a company to turn them into potato soup. Soup doesn't need a shape. So it fits very well. It's a good food. So what is enormous quantity of potato which is regularly thrown away, now we put it into the picture as a very attractive food, and people like it. People buy it through the supermarket and so on. Then we discover something called ugly vegetables. I had never heard this word before until I hit this one. Ugly vegetables are the ones which cannot be sold in the supermarket, because supermarket needs vegetables in a military formation.
Sure.
It has to be straight, it has to be nice, it is very clean, and so on, etc. But these are a little bit crooked, a little bit disshaped, and so on. It doesn't. They throw away. So the bulk of these vegetables don't come to the supermarket, and farmers don't have use for that. So we just buy up through this company all these throwaway vegetables, ugly vegetables, chop them up, and make it a nice little packets with a good sign, good brand, sell it. People don't know what shape it was originally. They see good food coming back. This is in our small way how we can do that. But many things can be addressed like that,
yes.
Being like the fruits. The mangoes in Bangladesh just waste away, because suddenly you have millions of mangoes in the summer season, and people can't eat all those mangoes. So they rot. And jackfruit, huge fruit, very delicious, very nutritious, but can't be eaten in the one season. So we're wasting away. So now we are trying to process that, make them, maintain them, dry them, so that it's a good food, extended their lifetime, do that. That's a social business. This is a problem. We come up with a business. Money-making business will not look into it, because they think they make money elsewhere so much that this is uninteresting for them. So that's where we need those eyes, those lenses, which see the problem and come up with a creative idea to solve that problem in a business way, sustainable way.
Yeah. Do you want to come in on this, or don't? Well, I just want to ask you, Peter, but I just want to ask you, so is social business compatible with capitalism, as you go ahead?
The way I've been, this is a common question asked to me. I said, look, capitalism is standing on one foot, because they interpreted human being as a selfishness-driven being. So it became unstable, one foot. So I'm putting another leg into it, 2 foot capitalism. So I'm not throwing away capitalism, I'm reconstructing capitalism, where human beings fully is integrated into it. I can be selfish in capitalism, at the same time I can be equally, even more powerfully, I can be selfless. I can do everything by being selfless and addressing this problem, which has not been addressed by other things. So I would say it is enrichment of the capitalism rather than throwing away the complete capitalism, because the competition is an important element, we still see it. Sustainability is a very important element, we still see it. We continue, but we challenge something. In the capitalist system, people are always said, all young people are asked, go and find a job. Job orientation is, again, I see as a wrong orientation. That has distorted the human being again. And I face this problem in Bangladesh when the young people from Grameen families, all those 9 million families where we serve, they got education but no jobs. So I keep saying that, why are you looking for jobs? Job is a very old-fashioned idea. Get rid of this. I said, you should think, I'm not a job seeker, I'm a job creator. Think like a job creator. Suddenly the world will be very different. And we make it happen by creating a social business fund and ask those unemployed young people, come with a business idea. If your illiterate mother, 20 years back, started in Grameen Bank taking $20 loan and start a business of her own, shame on you. After all this education and all that, you said, I'm unemployed. She didn't look for employment. She just took the money and started it. So we give them the money. They start the business. Now there's thousands of young people now come with business ideas every day. We keep on investing in them so that they can become entrepreneurs. So the solution to human being is not job. Is entrepreneurship. I said human beings are born entrepreneurs. They were, in our history, we never were sending job applications. When we were in the caves, we were not sending job application from one cave to the next cave. We are go-getters, we are hunters, we are gatherers, that's what we are. This is in our blood. But somehow capitalism, the way it is interpreted, this distorted the whole image of a human being and made them work. And when you work for somebody, your creativity is lost. Because it's dictated by somebody else. So you use only part of the creativity. So human being has unlimited creative power.
So
it's surrendered.
Forgive me for following this for one more minute, but just So this idea that you cite in Bangladesh, where you're turning all these young people into entrepreneurs, can that be exported to the developed world? I mean, here in Europe, there is now, especially with the crisis that's going on, we're talking about lost generations of young people who are unemployed.
I keep telling that same thing. If you agree that human beings are entrepreneurs, the unemployment is a distorted presentation of human being because of the concept of employment. Concept of employment created the unemployment. Human being didn't. Imagine a young, able-bodied, creative young person sitting idle, doing nothing. Does it make sense as a human being? It doesn't make sense. Something from the system has put a spell on this young man. He cannot lift his fingers, he cannot lift his arm. What kind of life is that? He's a go-getter, go ahead, do something.
Okay, thank you.
And create the environment to make it happen.
Peter. Now I'm going to come to questions.
Muhammad, you've spoken about very excellent examples of where there were opportunities in the food system to take underappreciated resources and repurpose them, which is historically what we've done in all kinds of entrepreneurships. You see an opportunity. No one eats that. Maybe it's edible, and how can we transform it? And what's interesting is it's not using. We've talked earlier today about innovation and new ways of doing things. These are just very old technologies, knives. You take a fruit that's ugly and you cut it up into different ways. So I think there's a lot of opportunity to harness creativity and innovation using very well-established thousands, 100, 10-year-old technologies to address issues in food systems, because all of that fruit that's not thrown out meets demand for consumption. That means somebody else, they haven't gone back an extra time to buy something more, which reduces in a very limited way, but in an important way, the need to expand the scope of production. There are other great examples. I mean, I think we live in an interesting time where we're so encouraged. My son is a young athlete, and they actually took them into the store, the grocery store, and they actually gave them, so you want to buy your food from the outer parts of the grocery store. At least that's how North American grocery stores are arranged. You stay out of the middle aisles, you stay around the outside, and because of the focus on fresh, right? So we want the military ranks of our fruit and everything else lined up nicely. But it seems like we've lost a sense of opportunities in terms of more historical conservation measures. I'm thinking about frozen and canned and other ways of holding food. That's really good. I know this may not seem, so here's my point. If we're concerned about losses, and this is a question you'd asked the last panel, where does it occur? In most of our societies, given who we are, it occurs closer to the final point of consumption. Absolutely, there are tremendous volumes at points of production and at processing, but the limited data that we have, because it's really hard to come by, we have enormous amounts that happen in homes. What is that form? Well, bread is thrown out, meat is thrown out, vegetables are thrown out, but the more fresh produce and food that we bring into our house, there's a clock running. And that clock can be extended by using fresh paper.
Fresh paper, yep.
On some products, but we have other ways of extending the life of those goods. Why are we buying so much fresh produce and fresh fish? As it was mentioned earlier today, I do a lot of work on seafood systems. Why? Why are we so obsessed with fresh seafood? I understand historically, from a 19th, early 20th century perspective, when we had poor conservation, seafood went off very quickly before it could get to the house. So we wanted ways of moving it more quickly. We wanted ways to preserve it. But now we have such fantastic at-sea freezing capacities that even blind taste tests that are done in Sweden and elsewhere, people cannot distinguish high-quality tuna from fresh or frozen.
But they would still say they want the fresh.
Absolutely. Yeah. But this is a cultural construct. And the losses along that supply chain are a fraction of what it is on a fresh supply chain, and you don't have to air freight it.
So one thing we need to build a sustainable system is a change in perception.
In lots of ways.
In lots of ways. Anne-Marie.
Yes, if you look at the whole value chain and you look where sort of the power is, where there are fewest people that have formed decisions, it's not the farmers, it's not the food producers, it's not the consumers, it's the retailers. That's where the decisions are being made on what we have on our shelves when we shop. And that is very seldom addressed, I think. I mean, they have a big responsibility, and maybe their responsibility is fading out now, and maybe we don't need them in the future. We can buy through the internet and so on. So I think they have a big impact and should be taken into account. And I think there is a big responsibility there, because, I mean, if you talk about, we talked earlier somewhere about mega cities, and most people will live in urban environments. There are areas where there are no shops.
It's a very interesting point, and I note with horror that we haven't got a food retailer here at the meeting, except for Tristram, of course, because he sells beer. So, yeah, there you are. Oh, yes, indeed.
But can I just respond? There's a lot of problems with the existing food system, but I don't know if one of them is a lack of choice in supermarkets. There is an enormous range of product forms there. There's an enormous range of options. We can choose to buy beef, pork, chicken, tilapia, cod, herring, mackerel, even in those animal protein space. I think I would rather locate the responsibility with us, that we need to be more informed, and this is a community that clearly you're here, so you are already aware, but we have this more generalized problem that people are not acting in ways that are sensible, and in part, it's the issue that Angus raised earlier, is because the price signals are terrible.
But on the other hand, the people that need nutritious food cannot afford it. So, I mean, I think that's why the sort of challenge is. You have to provide nutritious food to those who really need it. I mean, you won't need it. You maybe.
Well, none of us do. We're all. Let's be clear. And I'm well over nutrified.
About the inclination why people like the fresh fruit and so on and so forth. Businessman doesn't go into that. He sees that if I bring the fresh fruit, I get my return on investment is 30%. So this is the best return I can get. I continue that. If I go into 1 day old, 3 day old, my return on investment becomes smaller, so I'm not interested. So as the fresh fruits come in the supermarket, all the old fruits just dished out, go, because the shop must look fresh. Everything is fresh. That's where I make money. So that's why we need the orientation of mind with the business, that it is not about the return, it is about the food, about the health of the people. It is good food. So we need another orientation. That's what the social business is on. In the conventional business, you need the highest return on your investment. In the social business, all you need is to cover the cost. Yeah. So that's a big gap where the conventional business will not enter at all. That's where the problem-solving businesses can go in, address the problem, and solve it.
Thank you. Question, please.
Right in the middle.
Yep.
I have a quick counterpoint from my fellow Canadian. When I was a young mother home with children, I agonized over cloth diapers versus disposable, and I felt better the day I read A Feminist Perspective, pointing out that when mining companies can dump slag into waterways, why is the overworked housewife being made to bear the brunt of environmental pollution? You make a point about the need in the home to freeze, to can, to make better stews, but when a company is perfectly allowed to leave 20% of the bean on the stalk and screw the farmer that made it, home canning is not the point I'd like you to be talking about.
No. So I think it was not my point at all to place a burden on people in the homes, whether they be male or female. What I was suggesting, and it addresses the issue exactly. I'm perplexed why we want to have fresh beans from Kenya, and because of it, because it needs air freighting, it's going into very specific sacks. If it's chopped up in Kenya, giving them more employment, and flash frozen there, and then transported through not air freight, but slow supply chains, you're going to get all those beans to market with almost no losses and with lower impacts en route. we're actually talking about the same thing. I wasn't suggesting we need to burden, I don't want to go to the store and chop up apples and freeze them. That doesn't make any sense. Why don't we rely on other people to do that? And they exist. It's called the freezer aisle. And if we all shopped in it, it would get bigger.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have a quick question. I think we're talking about a system, the food system, that is nothing but the earth and the mouth that connects in between. And the more we have the middlemen in this, in any form, profitable, non-profitable, is leading to waste. And that is polluting the system that is between the earth and the mouth. And how can, I think my expectation from the panel, or the question is, how can we fix the flaws in that system that connects between the earth and the mouth?
Okay, and that's really advocating a very local food system.
Even how local a food system is, if you're overeating proteins, there's a problem. So even if we highly localize, then whether it's any of the major animal proteins, if we highly localize it, we're just going to be moving some of the production problems around. But all of that overconsumption of protein is still going to be a problem. So I think it's about scale of portions. We have to be thinking about that. We need to de-emphasize. I mean, we understand culturally why I think we've historically placed proteins at the center of plate, and we think about everything else afterwards. No one goes home and says, we're making mashed potatoes, and then worrying about what shows up around it. We think about, is it salmon first? Is it something else? Is it tofu? I think we need to de-emphasize that, go to smaller portions, move it off the center of the plate mentally. And then if we want to localize or centralize, I think that's a separate set of issues.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, my name's Dominique Foss. I just had a question of what kind of innovative technologies does our panel see that will help us build a sustainable food system for the future?
Anne-Marie, do you want to take that first?
Well, there are many, but one thing that is much discussed today is smarter packaging material. That can help distribution. You can bring frozen food to your home. You can store it, deliver it. You can have packaging material that tells you more about the content, so you know exactly what it is. And if the packaging material can interact with your smartphone, you have a lot of information there. So that is one thing. So packaging material, ICT, I think will change a lot, both in our behavior and also maybe in the distribution chains. But then I think there is a need for really true food technology to make this to increase sustainability of the production line, because we have to invest in processes that need more water, that produce less waste. And when we produce waste, it should not be waste, it should be biomass recovery. So we have to use the way in new ways. Maybe we can make new food raw material, maybe we can make biogas, maybe we can make something else, but we have to use everything that we produce. So that's what we talk about circular economy. It has been mainly dealt with the electronics industry, and now we are talking about the food industry should be circular, but we haven't really figured out exactly how and what knowledge is needed. But truly, we have to be a lot of innovative there.
Thank you, Peter.
Can I just quickly add? You open up a whole agriculture itself. It's technology at every step. Start with the seed, for example. It needs enormous technology, how to make that seed durable and sustainable so that it produces the best crop possible under odd circumstances, shortage of water, needs less water. You name it, it's your wish list of what a seed could be. This is a scientific kind of agenda that you have to come up with. And preservation of the food. How do you preserve it so that it doesn't get wasted in transportations and so on, in storage, all this not wasted. And also for the sake of processing. how to quickly process it where it is grown, rather than send it to some place in the city to make it happen. It should be done where it is produced. Their technology should be such the farmer himself or herself can convert it into different products. It doesn't have to wait for somebody else. Because the farmers are traditionally, no matter which country you are, the farmers always get the lowest price at the farm gate. It's the consumer who is paying the high price. In between the 2 points, there are other middlemen and everything else doing the job. So how to make it easy for farmers to get the consumer part, how to bring technology that you can sell directly. Without that possibility, what we are doing, we are creating an intermediary marketing company as a social business. We buy up collect the produce from the farmers, sell it in the ultimate market, get the money, bring it back. Because a social business, it doesn't have to make its profit on itself. All covers the cost. So this is one-way solution, but there's a technological solution, how to make that happen. So technology is needed in every aspect of it. Whatever you see is a problem, come up with that. Short duration, that it takes 90 days, it takes 120 days to grow it. Can you make it 100 days? Can you make it 90 days? Can you make it 80 days? Those kinds of things.
Thank you. Peter, you wanted to say?
We saw some wonderful materials this morning from the person from the MIT Media Lab.
Caleb, yep.
Really interesting. Part it kind of scares me. It seems so high-tech and so electricity-driven. But there are all kinds of other places that people are innovating right now, maybe not for direct human consumption, but for animal feeds. If we're going to continue to eat animals, whether they be terrestrial or aquatic, people are exploring all kinds of alternative sources of proteins and lipids using insects. South Africa has a fairly well-advanced soldier fly and maybe other species production systems, mostly I think as an animal feed driver. And a lot of the byproducts that you're speaking of, if we can't freeze them in the fields or near the fields, and we are going to be having biomass that's available, and why don't we can use that for insects and other products. The interesting challenge is, are we going to be culturally open to the opportunities? Here's an example. A colleague of mine was telling me last week, he's from the New England Aquarium. There was a US-based company that was making an insect meal product as an aquafeed for fish culture. They put it to market, they fed the fish, they sold the fish, and they made a profile around this. Hey, this is a lower impact, now they hadn't done the study, but they were claiming a lower impact fish that was resulting off of this insect meal, and they couldn't sell it, because apparently people didn't want to buy fish that had been raised on insects, which makes one wonder what they think fish in fresh water feed on.
No, but that came out in the evaluation you did earlier about what people were most scared of. That was artificial food.
Yeah,
so we have a cultural problem here.
Yeah.
But, is it artificial? I mean, some people are afraid of eating horse meat or dogs. Other people embrace those opportunities. Some people in the world eat insects. We don't like to eat insects, but I think we can sort of narrow the gap. We can sort of overcome these cultural barriers.
I did my PhD in the late 70s actually on new proteins for food, because it was really a crisis at that time. And we worked on single cell, soy protein, leaf protein, fish protein, whatever. But it never took off at that time. Right. So maybe this second round, something will happen. I don't know.
Do you think it will? Do you think it will?
Maybe people are more prepared now, but I think the cultural resistance will still be there.
Yeah.
And it also depends on how you deliver it. People don't know that it's all insects or something.
Yeah. You don't say. I mean,
your table.
So
it looks lovely.
Yeah.
So,
it smells good, tastes good.
Yeah, just lie to people.
Absolutely don't know how it's.
No, if you're silent.
It's a high-protein food.
Yeah, you got your answer. How to build a sustainable food. No, please.
Hello, my name is Franz Josef. It has been said that we don't face a lack of choice, but I want to disagree, because if I enter a supermarket, I feel a strong lack, because 99% what I encounter there is not food. And in these panel discussions or in this event, I mean, it's great and inspiring, but I do lack a bit of fresh thinking. I sometimes feel quite disheartened that we're just barely scratching the surface. I mean, there wasn't any mentioning of the soil, that most of the soil that we farm is so deprived of microorganisms that if we don't continue throw chemical fertilizer on it, it won't continue to yield food for us. And that's why our food is so tasteless, which correlates to nutritional deficiency. So there hasn't been any mention of good, strong, resilient seeds. I mean, we've had that knowledge for ages. We don't face a lack of knowledge, we face a lack of common sense. We're losing this knowledge in India and other parts of the world. So I lack a bit of the vision, like, you know, Elon Musk, he decided we're going to Mars, or Steve Jobs with the iPhone. They had no clue how to do this, but they decided to do this. So if I nowadays want to get, I mean, I'm overfed and undernourished, and we Westerners have exported that way of farming to the developing world. So if I now want to get good produce, I need to travel to a farm outside of Stockholm, right? And in London, there's Farm Drops, which is a good example. So I decided I need to start growing my own food, which is to Muhammad's point. I mean, we all have two hands and the brain and the heart. If we get to the bottom of things, I think we can do. And if humans have proven one thing, then that it's ingenuity can solve problems, but it takes more common sense. And
can I just get a quick definition? When you say that you go to the supermarket and most of it isn't food, you mean because most of it doesn't taste good, or, and what do you mean?
I mean that it's very low quality food. Even if it's organic, it comes from poor seeds and it comes from poor soil, and that's why it's so tasteless, right? So if I want to get better produce, I have to use an enlargement glass.
Okay, it's a fantastic question, thank you. But there's the two parts to it. I mean, one is whether you agree with that statement that things are not food because of that. And the other is, what is the moonshot or the Mars shot?
One, I could respond in a way. Again, I was talking about the job fascination, that we have to have a job for everybody, otherwise life is meaningless unless we have a job. You are a failure if you don't have a job. One upshot of that, the rural areas, all the young people are rushing to the cities to find jobs because the rural area doesn't give you the opportunity to stay there. So the young people are leaving. Farmers' families, the younger generation, are not involved in farming anymore because they want to have the job, to have this enjoyment of everybody that enjoys. So that is something kind of negative in the impact on the all the ideas that could be brought in. If we had the entrepreneurship orientation, you could be entrepreneur right there. You don't have to come to the city to become an entrepreneur. And everything that you see could be business opportunity in an entrepreneurial sense, that you create something which has a market which is people appreciate and buy it from you. So you'll come up with many ways with the given technology, and young generation today is a very technology savvy. They have world connections, so connected every place, and they use this technology to sell their product right out of their home rather than selling thing in the market, which is an old-fashioned idea where people would be spending a lot of money to get it done, and ultimately farmers get little. So what the point I'm making, that in order to make that happen, I think we have to address the other part also. It's not just a problem of agriculture, it's a broader framework issue that we have to solve.
Okay.
And underlying that is an arrow of change, which means there are more people all the time. And, you know, most recent demographic projections have us continuing to grow in population out past 2100. So urbanization is a very difficult thing to overcome, and for a lot of people, they don't want to go back to the land. I think it's a wonderful thing too. Before our son was born, we had big gardens. I still like to fish. I like to engage in a very physical, visceral way with things that I then consume. So I appreciate the observation that when you're there's something that's lacking, whether it's taste, maybe I have duller taste buds because I'm aged or I'm just different, or whatever we're missing from that environment, whether it's that physical transaction with where food comes from, or it's a taste, or it's somehow other sensory. It's wonderful if you have the motivation and have the time and the energy and are willing to do that hard work. But I think we also have to think about food systems that serve the rest of us, that take choices to be lawyers, to be street cleaners, to do other things that we also need to make urban society work.
So Muhammad came up with a bold plan, which is really changing the system in order to address the question. What about you? Do you have a bold challenge, vision? No reason why you should.
No. The bold challenge is, in some ways, it's incredibly easy and obvious, but we just don't do it. And that's allowing, this is, I think I'm going to channel Angus a bit earlier. We need to, if we want to address climate change, we want to address eutrophication, we need to start to have the prices of food reflect that, and not have whether it's spoken or an unspoken food policy in most of our democracies of cheap food. We have policies in place to keep food prices as low as possible. That's why we subsidize.
Thank you.
I think there's very little time left now, I can see. But there is one point that I think is really very important, and that is the projections for 2050 and the commodity prices. I mean, there is a projection for 2050 that the availability of rice will decrease by 30%. I mean, that must have an enormous impact. You talked about 2008, the rise in dairy price, but what we are facing is enormous imbalances in the commodity prices, and I think that is a great political issue that needs to be handled by trade regulations or something like that.
Thank you.
I mentioned two elements. One is the unemployment to transform into entrepreneurship. Another is a social business. It's a separate category of business. These two are important elements that we want to include so that we can have options for people. Today, in business, you have no option. You have only one type of option to make money. So we can design education system where you'll give us option that you can create your money-making business. At the same time, if you wish, you can have problem-solving businesses. You can do that and identify that it's a question of choosing even another one, charity versus social business. In charity, you have an objective of helping people and use the money to achieve that objective. It is done. The charity money goes and the objective is fulfilled, but the money doesn't come back. So all when we talk about social business is the objective of charity, put a business engine behind it. So they then call it social business. Social business money goes, does the work, and money comes back. And that same money can be used again and again continuously ever and ever. So that becomes more powerful to things to happen. So that idea can be promoted so that we can address this issue, and the creativity comes into the picture, technology comes into the picture. It's the creativity which drives it, and the technology which pushes forward. And the technology will keep on changing, increasing, enhancing as we go. But again, technology by itself cannot do things. Technology is designed by the driver behind who has designed it. And most of our time, technology and all the technology we're talking about are designed by the money makers to make more money, or war makers to be successful in their wars. So there is no social drivers in technology. We need social driver who will look at all those problems you're mentioning, come up with technology to just fit or make it easy for solving that problem that we have inside.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
There were... Thank you to all three of you. They were indeed bold visions to finish with. Thank you to the audience for all your questions and interest. Thank you, everyone.